And good evening, everybody, and welcome to the season finale of our spring YouTube live session here at PSAHPERD. I'm Todd Bedard, past president of PSAHPERD. With me tonight hosting is Brian Robinson, our co-host in the admin track from Cumberland Valley High School. And this guest tonight is somebody I've been looking forward to for the entire season. He is an amazing educator. He comes from a phys ed background, which is near and dear to my heart. And I saw him put this on the calendar on April 29th, and I thought, perfect guy to the season. We have with us from Daniel Boone School District, his superintendent, Brett Cooper, will be joining us tonight. This is the final episode of the season. Registration for convention is open. Everyone that you saw on this season of YouTube Live will be appearing at our fall convention at Spooky Nook. And we are going to amp up the marketing for that here really, really soon. You're going to see all kinds of things posting. That is a brand new facility, and if you've never been there, it's like it was built for physical education. We're going to show you, and you're going to have a fabulous convention, and this gentleman will be with us tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Brett to introduce himself, and then Brian's going to take our first segment tonight. So please welcome to the program, Brett Cooper.
All right, thank you. Thank
Brett.
you for that introduction, Todd. Thank you for that introduction, Todd. I appreciate it. You hear me? You hear me?
Oh. I'm still here, Brett.
Oh, okay.
We're live, so just keep rolling, right. and maybe Todd will join us
there
later.
We go. Yeah, all right. Just a little bit of background about myself. Currently superintendent of schools for the Daniel Boone Area School District. Prior to this position, I served as a high school principal, Board 10 Area Senior High, which was about a 2,250 student high school, grades 9 through 12. I was in that role for 10 years. Prior to that, 3.5 years as a grade level or assistant principal. And then prior to that, I spent 15 years as a health and physical education teacher, 5 years at a high school level teaching health and physical education, and 10 years as a middle school physical education teacher. Undergraduate work was from Lockhaven University, Bachelor of Science in Health and Physical Education, obviously, and then went on to Millersville University, finished with my Master's of Ed in Sport Management, and then completed my doctoral work in all my administrative certifications, superintendent's letter of eligibility at Immaculata University down in Malvern. I'm married of 29 years. My wife's a saint. I've oftentimes told her throughout my career she was a coach's widow at some point, and then a principal's widow. Now she's a superintendent's widow. But she's been a great lady, Julie, and supporting me in my endeavors. And I've got 2 wonderful children, a son who's 24, Tyler, and a daughter who is 20, and that's Haley. Just a little bit about my belief system and beliefs in education is basically preparing all of our students to be career, workplace, and college ready. And as we go into the segment of some of the questions, I'm sure I'll be able to kind of vet that out as to specifically what that means. And in that particular order. And basically, I think the most primary purpose in the field that we're at and anything that we do is building relationships with people, in particular students, but the people we work with.
Well, thanks, Brett, for joining us tonight. Right before we went live, we discovered that you're in starting month 4 of your superintendency, so you're just rounding out your 100-day plan. So I'm sure everything is perfect and ready to go. But we want to start by talking about the I word and innovation. So, as a new leader, how are you empowering your staff, and specifically your administrators, to empower their staff to be innovative without fear?
I think the first thing you have to, promote and believe in and model is working collaboratively from that standpoint. And you've got to model those. If your expectation is for your administrators to work in a collaborative environment and be willing to be open and allow for their folks to take risks. I think that's got to be promoted, but at the same time, that's got to fall within what your mission, vision, core values, and priority areas are as a district. And at the building level, then that kind of stems off of what the district's mission, vision, core values, and priority areas are. And once you develop what it is that you want your profile of a graduate to be based on being career, workplace, and college ready, I think that's where it all starts is that collaborative approach, and that's got to involve a lot of different stakeholders, not just folks within the school buildings or within the school system organization. It's also imperative that you include folks from the community, and whether they are community members that are parents or guardians of the students that they entrust to us every day, or just your folks in the community who may not have students there, because they've got a vested interest in what goes on in the community also. So it's got to be openness and willingness to have that collaborative approach, as we work together to educate our young people.
So Brett, continuing with this segment, you know from your work as a teacher and even as a principal, culture is imperative to school, and it also requires deliberate action. What kind of deliberate things do you do as superintendent that allow and then push your team to do to create that positive culture within the school buildings?
Well, I think the most important thing when you're talking about culture is relationship building. Building those meaningful, appropriate relationships with people, whether it's with our students we work with every day, with our colleagues, and we talk about colleagues. It could be fellow teachers or fellow staff members, support staff members, in the form of custodials, clerical, cafeteria workers, maintenance workers. It doesn't matter. So as you're working to develop and establish that culture, relationship building, that's what helps build trust. And I've always been a believer throughout my career that the first thing you need to do is build those relationships with folks. And I always attribute to my coaching days and the players that I coached. Once they trusted me, they would do virtually anything for you as a coach. So coaching or teaching is no different than coaching. Being an administrator is no different than being a teacher or a coach. It's developing those relationships with people, and once you've done that and developed that trust, whether it be with kids or the people you're working with, it's a lot easier to establish that accountability model, and they understand, the folks that are around you, whether students or faculty or staff members, they understand that you're gonna give them the responsibilities or a task. You'll follow up with them, on a frequent basis, and then sometimes that means having those difficult conversations and being brutally honest. But if you've developed that culture of trust through developing those meaningful, appropriate relationships, folks, they want to be held accountable, whether it be our students or the people we work with each and every day, or parents, community members. It doesn't matter who. I mean, you can substitute any stakeholder in that, in that vernacular that indicates this. This is how we're going to work as a group, and you mean something to the organization. We value your input. We value what role you have to play in delivering education for our young people, and that's important.
Cool.
I really liked what we talked about there, Brett, where you're letting people feel valued, and from that and those trusting relationships, folks feel able to take risks. Moving into what you had alluded to a little bit earlier, I want to talk about redesigning the learning experience. We have a quote from John Dewey. If we teach today's students as we taught yesterday, we rob them of tomorrow. Brett, there are so many models that we can use to change learning. What do you think is important to change in the way that we educate today?
Well, I think it goes back to what I started out with a little bit about myself and philosophy and preparing kids to be career, workplace, and college ready. And whether it's a philosophy of mine and in conjunction with, I'm a big advocate of Dr. Willard Daggett, who's the CEO of the International Center for Leadership and Education. And I followed his work probably right before even I got into administration, the latter part of my teaching career, and what his belief systems were, and pushing the envelope of preparing our kids through rigorous opportunities or environments that preparing them for the jobs that we don't even know are going to exist yet. So when we talk about career, workplace, and college ready, and I understand that the Pennsylvania Department of Education coins it. We want to make sure our kids are college and career ready. Well, we've been asking our kids to be college ready for years and years and years. And college is important. Don't get me wrong. And our county, Berks County, and our district's no different. And we're up to 78% of our students matriculate to a 4-year or 2-year college. And however, when you take a look at the students who go back for that second year of being around 35 to 38%, what if we failed those 40%? We didn't provide them with the opportunities or identified properly what it is that what they need to be prepared for. So if we know, if our kids kind of get an idea of what the career is or careers are that they're looking for, then we can establish, okay, what do we need to get to that end point? What are the opportunities? What are the learning environments that we can provide for them that are going to allow for them to be those successful young members, productive young members of our society? And I've often said this, and I've had conversations with parents in the past. I can remember this probably about 3 years ago in my well into my principalship. I had a parent come to me on an orientation night. It was a freshman orientation night for her son, and she currently had 11th grade student in my building. And she says to me, I don't know what we're going to do. I got a son that's coming up through here, and he's different than his sister. Okay, that's probably a good thing. Each one of our children should be a little different from each other. And she has no problem. She's going through all these AP courses, very knew what she wanted to do with her career. She was going to college, and the mother looked at me and says, "But my younger one, we got to find out what to do, and I just can't get him motivated to go to college." And then I looked and I questioned her. I said, "Well, why does he have to go to college?" She said, my first question. And she looked at me and said, "Well, because my parents went to college, and I went to college. My husband went to college, and the two older siblings are going to college, so he needs to go to college." And I looked at her and I said, "Okay." I said, "I can understand your passion for further education." I said, let me ask you a question. I said, "Have you ever, in the recent, 2, 3, 4 months, written a check out to a plumber or an HVAC technician that came to your house to do some work?" "Oh yeah, just about 2 months ago, I had something was wrong with my heater, and I had a technician come out." And I said, "Did you write that technician a check?" And she said, "Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, I did." I said, "Well, let me ask you this." I said, How long was that technician at your house?" "I was maybe no more than an hour." I said, "What'd you write that check for?" And she said, "Oh, it cost me $400. I said, "Oh, okay, but you wrote the check, right?" She said, "Well, I had to write the check." I asked him, "You only here for an hour?" He said, "Yeah, it's still $400. And then she looked at me and with a puzzled look, and she says, "I think I know where you're going with this." I said, "Okay." I said, "That's good." I said, "That was the intent of this conversation." And interestingly enough, the young man, as I was exiting Boyertown, his parent was very involved in my principal council, and he was towards the end of his sophomore year now, and involved in the Career Tech Center, and went into one of the career programs over there. And she said to me, she goes, "I never thought I'd hear myself saying this, but you were right. He's found his niche. He loves what he's doing. And there's he's going to be able to make a career of this. And I said, "Oh, okay, I'm glad that we had that conversation. We were able to find something for your son to do, and what it was that he it could be potentially interested in as a career post high school." And I'm always of the belief that that being career, workplace, and college ready, because we always need to learn, and I think that's important, is to continue to learn and grow, and no matter what age. And each one of our young people, and as we go into early adulthood, mid adulthood, later adulthood, we should always be open and willing to learn. And I mean, we know research indicates that, hey, our kids today, when they graduate, could potentially have 10 or 12 different types of jobs by the time they're in the mid 30s, over the course of 10 or 12 years, because that's how fast things are changing. So it's that continual learning piece. And that's where that Willard Daggett's rigor and relevance framework comes into play, where his belief system is that we should be focusing our efforts in that quadrant D, he calls it, which is basically assimilation and teaching our students to be productive and learners in an environment that doesn't really even exist yet, and to challenge your thinking and take those risks. So I think all of those items together are probably what has framed my belief system and education, what's important with our young people, and how we need to change what we do and what we focus on, with our educational system.
So just to segue a little bit off of that, before we move to the next question, there's a lot of models out there to kind of do what you're talking about with that young person that you had the conversation with their parents about the HVAC. There's pathway models, there's the academy models, there's the internship, there's they call it career class, where you have to do like a project. We call it a grad project at our school, and there's my son's school, they call it career project. What is Daniel Boone doing, or what are you doing at Daniel Boone to kind of provide that opportunity? Because I agree with you. I think kids going to school and realizing, hey, wait a minute, I just paid $30,000 for 1 year, and I realized I hate engineering, and I thought I liked it.
Right.
What kind of things are you doing at Daniel Boone, or going to do at Daniel Boone to help kids experience that before the stakes get too high with the financial commitments?
Right. That's a great question, and I take a look at what we're currently doing, where we went ahead, and I feel as a district, and this is what I've learned in my 100-day plan, and have shared the summary of findings, and I believe in transparency. So one of the things I've done from the start of being in this district is posted that transition plan on the website for all stakeholders to see, to review, kept a success tracking document on where I was at in that 100-day plan. And then once completed, the plan's up there now as far as the findings and where our growth opportunities are as a district. I always like using the terms, what are our strengths and what are our growth opportunities? I just think what are our weaknesses, I think, has just a negative connotation. I think we always have opportunities to grow, so I would rather refer to them as growth opportunities. So one of the things that we do well is from the college preparation part of it. We've got a pathways model. We can always get better at what we do. There's always growth opportunities for there, and offering our students more. But one of the things that we do here at Daniel Boone High School is we offer a wide variety of the AP courses, which again, it caters that college component. And we also have offer in conjunction with our local community college, a 2-year associate's degree program, general associate's degree program. We currently have 12 students in that program right now, where they can come out and graduate from high school at the same time, graduate with an associate's degree from a local community college, and basically at a fraction of the cost. I think that the total cost for that would be somewhere around $6,500, which is a pretty significant savings for 2 years worth of college. So we do those things well. Where I think we have some opportunities for growth are in the career technology portion of what we do. Yes, we have students go to the Career Tech Center. I do believe, though, when we take a look at that disconnect between that 75 to 78% of our students that go on to post-secondary, and then the 35 to 38% that go back for that second year. Again, there's that 40%. We've missed them. We've misidentified, or we haven't assisted them in identifying what it is, career path or workplace, or what they want to do post-secondary training. And one of the things that we're looking to focus on is the internship and externship. But we have there's a lot of schools that are going down that road and providing our students with those experiences. One thing that I'd like to see us do, take it a little bit further, and we've already started conversations with about this, is apprenticeship experiences for our students, which means non-traditional means of our students accessing their required courses in high school. And what does that look like from a blended learning perspective? Using virtual courses just to be able to allow for students to get out their junior and or senior year and get in the workplace and learn that skill, that trade, and become apprentice in these fields that are just unsaturated with talent right now, and that are ripe for our students to access. And if that means non-traditional ways of getting these, so if you want to call them general eds done, and there are other requirements, then we've got to look that direction for those students, because we've been doing a disservice to those students.
Yeah, you can really end up, it sounds like, with even the community college program, you can save families up to like $40-some thousand, and knocking 2 years off of their 4-year degree quest too.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Right.
Brian, you want to jump in with the next one?
Yeah, so Brett, to bring us back to the redesigning the learning experience, you talked about some of the experiences that you guys are providing your students at Daniel Boone in terms of blended and online. What are your thoughts on closing the digital divide? Are you folks one-to-one? If you're not, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we're actually our first year in a one-to-one initiative in our grade 9 through 12. Every student has gets at the beginning of the year, gets a iPad, and it's interesting to see. I mean, it was the way it was rolled out. Having only been here for 3 months, obviously that was something I had to research and to see process was, because we obviously want to expand that at our lower levels, and backward design it. But spent a year training the staff on how to utilize that as a learning tool, and to make sure that they're not bricks or stops and not being used. So I think that's something that's important. I think one of our growth opportunities, though, as a district, is we've put these devices in our students' hands. However, one of the things we have not done is provide them with some type of training for students. I like to refer to it as a digital driver's license. It's something we actually did in my former school district as a high school principal, where students had to access an online learning modality and go through these lessons, both their freshman and sophomore year, and access we call them digital driver's license certificate. And basically it's to teach them to be good stewards of this technology. We got to be careful we're not putting it into their hands and teaching them what's good information, what's bad information, what they should access, what they shouldn't access, because it's a digital footprint. And if they're accessing things that are potentially harmful for them, whether it's, and you've got your filters in school and on school property, but, as they're at home on their own, we've got to teach them to be good digital stewards here as well. So, that's a growth opportunity for us. And we're currently looking at some of the experiences I had in a previous district on using some of those pieces to educate our kid from that perspective. But we are one-to-one at the high school. Next year, we'll be training our middle school staff, which is grade 6, 7, and 8 building. And then the 2021 school year, rolling it out with our middle school students, so that grades 6 through 12, we will be at that point in time a one-to-one iPad school. At both those schools. We're utilizing more of our Chromebooks at the earlier levels in the intermediate center, and there are some iPads, but probably more Chromebooks at that level than iPads. Those aren't one-to-one. Those are in the classrooms. Obviously, students aren't taking them home with them, but students do access and have access to that technology during the school day at those levels.
So thankful to hear you say that you're talking about training the kids, because I think, in my travels around and talking to school districts and looking, I always think we do a great job teaching teachers. We give them new ideas, we give them professional development, professional learning opportunities, but then we say, okay, we're going to use this new technology, and then we just assume the kids know what they're doing. So I'm really thankful to hear that you guys are doing that. As we move into technology, I think school districts and even teachers and things oftentimes they say, well, how do we know it's working? What do you know? What's your return on investment or your return on instruction? How do we know it's working? What are some measures that you would say to look for to some of our viewers that we can say? Because I know as a superintendent, you have to report back to your board, hey, we're spending this money. How do I know I'm getting my money's worth? And as a teacher in the classroom, I'm using this technology that the district provides. How do I know my kids are learning, or what kind of measures would you expect to see, or would you suggest that people use in those cases to make sure you're getting a return?
Yeah. And you always standardize measurements, is the use of technology enhancing that, and is allowing for us to access more content that's are increasing our standardized scores. But I think the true measure comes in the daily, on a daily basis, with our students engaging with that technology, and what are they creating with that technology. On each one of their courses, how are their teachers working to engage them in that device and accessing the content that they're accessing. Another growth opportunity for us in this district, and you had mentioned it, Todd, about some career portfolio or career assignments that students need to do in your experiences. And in my previous district, we had the same sort of thing, and it was a pretty robust program. And when the 339 standards came out and people were scrambling for, we got to do this, got to do that, we were already doing it, so it wasn't really much of an issue for us, and already having access to electronic portfolios. So that's a growth opportunity for us here in the district. Fortunately, we do have some programs that we can model that after to make it fit what our students and community's interests and needs are. So that's a positive. So I think it's that positive engagement. And when you're talking about our students going through those career portfolios or their engagement with those 339 standards, okay, now make them put something together using those devices and those tools that they've learned through utilizing that device over the 4 years, and then present it to a panel of people, whether it be a panel of teachers, staff members, community members. One of the things in my previous experience was we did that presentation to staff members district-wide, and just as I was exiting my former district, we had plans to expand that to invitations of community members to be panel members as well. Not evaluate, but sit there to see what our kids are doing, and engaging with that technology and what it is that they've learned, and what it is that they learned they wanted to do. But even more importantly, what is it they learned that they know they don't want to do now? And that's a lot of times that's even more important, because they have this preconceived knowledge that, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to go into this field. Then they have an internship experience or shadowing experience as per their requirements in this career portfolio. And they're like, well, I thought I wanted to do this. And when I went out and did it, I knew that I didn't want to do it. And that is more valuable than anything else. So then they steer themselves in another direction. So there's something to be said for that. And with these devices in their hands and technology and engaging with that, the conversations, like we're having right now. I mean, we could be having this across the big pond with technology. So this allows for them to engage and learn from students in other cultures, other parts of the world, and it increases the diversification of the or the exposure to diversity as well.
So I'm so thankful to hear that. It reminds me of a school in Virginia. I had the opportunity, my school district provided me an opportunity to get down to Albemarle County and see Pam Moran and what they're doing down there in Ira Sokol. And they would bring in, just like you're saying, community members, and they would have these kids present these projects to these kids. And they were telling stories. They're kind of further down the road than I think all of us are here in Pennsylvania, but they had 2 or 3 kids that had patents that were provided for it, and these companies paid for these kids to get these patents. There was one kid that created, he was actually a discipline problem. He was in school, he'd get in trouble all the time, and they kind of put him in the maker lab, and he created this balls and strikes, this infrared balls and strikes collar, and he got a patent on that, and is working on selling that to Major League Baseball and so on. So it's really neat. It's really cool that these opportunities are provided by schools. And I love what you said too about sometimes finding out what you don't want to do is more important. It's, while the stakes are low. I mean, that's just so important. So yeah, thanks for that. So Brian, you want to bring us home?
Yeah, Brett, when you were talking about reaching out to the community in your other district, it made me think about community outreach and communication. As a new superintendent, better than we do that telling your organization's story is so important in this era of stakeholders who are either hyper engaged or completely disengaged. How do you plan on telling your district story?
Well, first, it goes back to what I opened up with, and creating that culture of collaboration and trust, and be willing to open your doors and have folks be a part of the creation of what it is that you want your mission, vision, core values, and priority areas to be as a district and community, and then hold yourself accountable as a district and as a community to that mission, that vision, those core values, and those priority areas. What is it that as a community is important for our Daniel Boone area school district or high school graduate? What does that look like? And then you've got to market. You've got to market that. Market it through various means. In today's day and age of technology, I think our websites can be powerful tools. That's a growth opportunity for us here. As a matter of fact, we'll be going to a new vendor in July. It was just approved by the board to go to a new vendor because our website, we were in the website hosting business as a district, and we're an educational entity. We're not in the website hosting. So we'll contract out with a vendor to do that. But it can be used as a powerful tool and market. What is our brand? What is our Blazer brand? And fortunately, in my situation, my previous district, which was, I think I shared earlier, Boardtown High School, I always felt that when I had the opportunity to go back there as an administrator, which was virtually about 10 miles down the road from where I grew up, and actually some of the local stores there, I actually worked at it when I was in high school because it was so close to this part of the district. I felt like I was getting close to home, getting back to my roots. But this situation here, when this came open for me and I took advantage of the opportunity, felt like I came back into my house because it's the district where I graduated from, and Daniel Boone High School graduate. So, I think I'm in a unique situation where, and this came out in research and in my 100-day plan, and the community, although what it looks like may have changed over the past few years, the past years, as far as its growth, the community values are the same. We've got people who care about kids, very supportive of their school system and their children in the school system. I mean, you go to I've been to quite a few evening events at all the various levels, and just the sheer volume of parents that come out to support their children, from the theatrical play that happened at the high school to Peter Abbott at the primary center. It's just the number of people that come out to support the kids. And as a student here, when I was going through the system, I experienced the same thing. So I think we're in a position here as a district where that has not changed. That's good, because that means that we have stakeholder input, stakeholder interest in what's going on in the school system and what's going on in the community. So as far as trying to overcome any barrier that would create, that's not there. So I think that's something that we can work with and use to our advantage as we continue to market our Daniel Boone Area School District graduate. And I came in a situation where our comprehensive plan, we're working on the tail end of it. It's actually, we were able to get a year extension on it because they were waiting for the new superintendent of schools. And we went through a process as I was going through that transition plan of developing a stakeholder group to develop our mission, vision, core values, and priority areas. So there was members of the community, parents, guardians, parents who didn't have students in school, administrators, teachers, bus drivers, students. Everybody was involved in that process, and we got one more day to do in that 3-day process, and it was a very powerful 2 days, and it'll be a powerful third day coming up in another 3 weeks here as we finalize what that mission, vision, core values, and priority areas are. So I think as we tell our organization story, we've got to be willing to market our brand and who we are as a district and who our kids are, and a product of our communities.
And that's so important too, because our good friend Joe Sanfilippo always says, if we don't tell the story, they're going to fill in the blanks. In the absence of knowledge, community fills in the blanks, and we've all done that. I think that's natural human behavior. So, yeah, keep telling that story. So, Brett, we're going to finish up our evening program here with something I call Twitter advice. So, the idea behind it is in 280 characters or less. First things that come to mind, Brian and I will just alternate through it and see what you think. So I'll start it off. And one thing you need to do to become a great teacher.
Yeah, without sounding repetitive, is developing those meaningful and appropriate relationships with our most important assets in our communities, and that's our students. Without that, you're not going to be able to provide relevant opportunities or rigorous experiences for our kids.
All right. Speaking of students, what is the most important learning for those students?
I think it's important for them to truly understand that they can do anything that they aspire to do. However, they have to be willing to persevere. And as the difficulty, as they reach those difficult challenges, understand that there are people out there that will support and help them, and they need to access that support and that help when needed.
All right. Favorite educators or books that you've read for professional learning? So educators we could follow on Twitter, or books that you've read that are kind of on your essential top 5.
Well, it was interesting because we just finished a book study as an administrative team, and it may be an uncharacteristic book, but it was called How Stella Saved the Farm, and it's about a group of farm animals who basically ran their own farm. They had to change the way that they did things, and it was interesting through that process. You saw you can kind of see the different characters in our organization administratively and who fit what bill, and we went through that. But if we talk about favorite educators on Twitter, I follow Dylan Willem, and he's a favorite of mine. George Corus is a favorite of mine, and obviously Matt Trout. You can't leave Matt
out. Yeah, I follow him. He's a good dude.
Brett, well, if there's one thing that the listeners can do tomorrow to make our schools better, what's that one thing?
Well, it's interesting because you reference it in your question. Listeners, listen. There's a reason why we have 2 ears and only 1 mouth. So oftentimes, in our field of education, we become very over articulate, and we don't take the time to listen to whether it's our students or our colleagues or our staff, because we're more powerful. Our ideas are more powerful as a group than they are as a single one person. So I would say, listen, listen, listen.
Awesome. So maybe this will segue into that. Who knows? What's the best advice you've ever gotten? And if you remember who it came from, share with who. From who?
Well, if I've shared this numerous times over my career, and it's a quote by Teddy Roosevelt, and you can substitute nobody. You can say students or people don't really care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I've often said that to staff members. At the secondary level, sometimes we get caught up in our content, and we think that our kids love our content as much as we love our content. It's not necessarily the case. But if they know how much you care about them, then it's going to open up some learning doors for them.
All right, Brett, you have survived our Twitter advice gauntlet until this last question. What is the one phrase that you would want to be remembered by?
I would probably say the one phrase, I would say it would be, it was interesting because I'll share this with you. When I left my previous district just 3 months ago, there was a segment that was done on what we call Bear Insight or Bash Insight. It's a 1 hour long show that our kids put on monthly. And there was a 10-minute segment on there on my tenure as a principal, assistant principal, and the principal in that building. I spent 13 and a half years there. It's a good part of my career. Get to know a lot of people, a lot of community members. And it was very surreal. And there were terms thrown around by the kids, and just genuine, I'm a genuine person. One kid said legend, involved, cared about the kids. It wasn't just sitting behind the desk, got involved with us, various events. And, if it's one thing that I want to be remembered by, and that's getting in there and getting involved with people that are down in the front lines each and every day, whether it's our kids or our staff members they're dealing with our kids every day.
Wow. Well, Brett, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Like I said, this one's been on my calendar circled since we started planning it. I was so happy to have the opportunity and the honor to be able to talk with you tonight. And I could spend another 45 minutes with you, but I don't want you to end up in like marriage counseling or divorce court over this show. So we should probably wrap it up. But man, wow. And folks, if you're watching tonight, please don't miss the convention. Brett will be there on Friday, December 6th. Thomas Murray will be keynoting, and then Brett will be one of our administrators speaking that day. You're not going to want to miss it. He's a fabulous human being, as you can see, and we can't wait to see you in the fall. So thanks so much, Brett.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks, Brian, for hosting tonight.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure.